Hey, Sens fans, welcome to season 4, episode 19 of the Senstennial podcast, a member of the Hockey Podcast Network. This week, we're taking a look at Ottawa's dismal, lackluster, and brutal road trip. There's a whole lot of other words that we could put there to describe this road trip, but we'll just call it the road trip from hell. So, after Ottawa's last home game, things went south quickly as they traveled to Chicago, and well, it wasn't a good game to say the least. So, Matt, I'll kick it off to you. And what did you think about Ottawa's start to the road trip and maybe just their road trip in general?
Well, obviously, I thought it was extremely disappointing, and that's a bit of an understatement. The guys were riding high after that Blue Jackets win, and they had all the swagger in the world. The Sens fans were pouring over them, chanting, "We want playoffs." And they dominated the Blue Jackets, and as they should. But you go into Chicago and the expectation was that you were going to spank the Blackhawks. And that because they shouldn't have won the last game that you lost. They came from behind and beat you. And then you lose 5-0.
And
And
Chicago has gotten significantly worse since
yeah,
that previous
they
game.
yeah, like the best player on that team is Luke Richardson, and the guy's done. Like he's their coach. Uh the point being here is that the writing was immediately on the wall after that Chicago game that things were not were as they seemed, and we were about to be in for a very rude wake up call. So the Senators were outscored 25-11 on the road trip from hell. They were luckily able to beat the Seattle Kraken in a very important game. But they were getting no power play help whatsoever. In fact, it was a detriment to them going on the power play because they gave up three shorthanded goals in that span. They had more shorthanded goals scored against them than they scored power play goals that entire road trip. Everything about the power play dried up and the whole unit was disjointed. Uh, a lot of criticism has been pointed at Thomas Chabot for a lot of that, and I think there has been a lot of crazy criticism going towards the guy, but some of it is warranted considering he's an $8 million player and he has done this time and time again. So why is this season the outlier, so to speak, or why has he commented down to earth? And it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, quite frankly. And our defense in general fell apart. Adding Jacob Chikrin, great, awesome player. Hasn't looked that awesome though. You have Nick Holden coming in for Eric Brandstrom, who was the best player in the Chicago game. Like it's all of these things that are happening, and here we are. We've lost 4 games in a row, and the hole to climb out of is damn near impossible to even look at the glinting light that is the playoffs.
And I mean, I'll jump in. Like, they do have a chance. Now, I say that very loosely. Pittsburgh would need to put up more efforts like they did against Montreal, which actually I watched that game. It wasn't even a bad effort from Pittsburgh. It's just, I don't know, Montembeault just kind of did his thing and stood on his head. But Pittsburgh needs to continue to lose winnable games like that. The Islanders need to continue to lose games, and it's hard when you're basically basing your destiny off of other teams losing versus yourself just being confident and being able to win games. That's not a good way to go about things because you don't want Ottawa to trickle into a playoff spot and then just crap the bed against Boston. Like,
Yeah.
you don't want that because what's that going to do for morale? Like, anyway, that's besides the point. Staying on topic of the road trip, Bennett, I'll give you a chance to chime in here in a second, but after they lost to Chicago, it was definitely frustrating. And on paper, Ottawa's roster, I think, wins 9 times out of 10. It's just unfortunate that that one time was just such a brutal game. When they bounced back in Seattle, I was like, okay, they lost the 3-goal lead, but they came back and they managed to stay in it. Even though they were down 4-3 at one point, they managed to take the win, and it took the wind out of the sails of Seattle. I'm sure gave them a huge boost to be like, yeah, okay, we gave up the lead, but we held strong. We took the win. To then follow it up with an abysmal effort against the Canucks, like it was inexcusable to give up 5 goals to the Canucks, and then you give up more than 5 goals in the next 2 games, right? You give up 5 to Calgary and then 6 to Edmonton. I know one was an empty netter, but you're not going to win games letting in 5 every night. And we could talk about Sogard. I personally don't think he deserves a ton of blame. He's coming into a tough situation, but I'll let Bennett chime in on his thoughts about how the Sens have played over their last 5.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it sucks that after the high that we were all riding, the week of the trade deadline, we had those back-to-back, wins against Detroit. We land Chychrun, and then we go and we beat the Rangers, and and Columbus. Sky was the limit, right? This is the team, unparalleled success, all that shit. And then we just completely fell flat in our faces in the week after. And really, I mean, like the playoff chances, the week previous, were still not great, but because the trajectory was upward, it felt really promising. And with 4 losses out of 5 now, it feels really like it was sort of a pie in the sky all along, although it is a hole of our own digging. But yeah, I mean, there's so many things that have gone wrong. The wheels just came off the bus, didn't they? I mean, goaltending has not been good. The power play, which had been a strength of this team all season long, suddenly sort of dried up, and I don't think any of us can exactly pinpoint where it went wrong. And injuries haven't helped as well. We were without Shabbat and Joseph last night against Edmonton, who, I mean, have a lot of firepower and can always do damage to you. But yeah, I mean, on the one hand, I think it's disappointing because we've seen our playoff hopes pretty much evaporate at the last within the space of a week. However, I'm glad that that's happening, at the game 67 mark and not the game 17 mark, which is the way that it's felt the last couple of seasons. And then one final point before I kick it back to you guys is that I think that the trade deadline was a smart deadline, and what's happening right now doesn't necessarily take away from that, because Chychrun is a player that can help us for 2 more years after this. And I think that he was always coming a little late to necessarily like be the spark that helps us, push for a playoff spot. But having him for a full 82 games next season, knock on wood, I think is going to be a huge boost. And yeah, I mean, it sucks. It's disappointing, but maybe I think meaningful games is still happening, and I think if that's what we've been talking about all season long, and I think that even if it hurts, it still feels meaningful.
Yeah, and I mean,
it's still real to me, damn it.
in comparison, in comparison to last season, like the Sens are out of it in November, December. Like there wasn't even a hope in hell that they were going to go and even compete for a wild card spot. So I mean, it took until, I mean, if we're counting, let's say now as being the Sens out of the race, if you want to put it that way, mid-March is a lot better than mid-December. And that's something that we haven't had in 6-7 years now. So it's nice to finally have that feeling again of like, wow, like the Sens at least were in it till a month and a half before the season ends. And that feels good. Although it sucks when they, like you said, Bennett, they were on this upward trajectory. Dorion goes out. He's like, you guys had a good game against that. Well, okay game against the Habs, but they prevailed. And then they had those 2 solid efforts against Detroit. And Dorion's like, okay, I'll go out. I'll make this team better. and adds a guy who has term in Jacob Chikrin. He comes in, plays great against the Rangers, plays great against Columbus. Overall has played well with the Sens. Here and there, there's been some blunders, but I mean, the whole roster has had blunders, so I'm not going to single any particular player out. But yeah, it's when you have like a vote of confidence in the team, I'm like, this is going to really drive them, give them momentum. And then the power play goes cold and then starts allowing goals against on the power play. And even Brady Tkachuk last night when he was interviewed against Edmonton, he's like, yeah, it got in our heads. And that's not good. So whether Davis Payne is calling all the shots on the power play or DJ Smith has final say, um, I don't know. Something went wrong, and I mean they got one in Edmonton, so at least they finally got one for, and that hopefully nixes the curse. But it was not a good look for the team, and this road trip has certainly been one from hell when you're looking at team performance across the board. Really, only the penalty kill was good. Aside from that, every aspect of the team was poor, and that's just really frustrating to watch when they were on this upward trajectory, and now it's like, I don't know, like I watch the games, I don't get like super excited, I don't get super down, I just kind of watch them, and I'm like, man, when I went to the game against the Columbus Blue Jackets, it was one of the only times as a Sens fan in the last, like, I don't know, 8 years that I've been consistently going to games where I walked into the arena and I was just like, I know the Sens are going to win tonight. Like, I
Yeah.
just knew. Like, I was like, yeah, okay, Columbus could potentially pull one out here. They have some good players, Line, Gaudreau, Jenner. But I just knew going to the arena, I'm like, the Sens will get a win tonight. And that's really not a feeling that we've had over the past,
Yeah.
number of years. So I'll
And
end my rant with that, essentially, that it's really frustrating to go from that, the playoff chance and everything, being excited. And now it's like, even if they had gone like, I don't know, 3-2, like if it was about 500, I would not, or like a 2-2-1, I wouldn't be in such a bummed out state. But
yeah, I do have one last point on all of this, and I think it's really tough when you have people writing articles and putting it out there that the Sens are about to go on a hamburglar like run, and like you're putting a lot of expectation on two rookie goalies, uh
yeah,
and I think it was definitely a choice for Dorion not to go get a little bit of backup help, or a guy like James Reimer in San Jose was expecting to be moved. Nedeljkovic is sitting in the AHL. Uh, like there are guys out there that probably would have been a more substantial stopgap. And don't get me wrong, I'm not blaming the goalies here. I'm definitely blaming our defense, but having somebody who's been in a situation where they're in a march for the playoffs, and they've been in the playoffs, both of those guys have been, it would have been beneficial to maybe go get them for a low price, because that it would have been down to the last minute. Dorion says, "Yeah, I'll take him for peanuts on the dollar," and that's that.
I
But
know Quick hasn't had a great year, but even LA was trying to pay people to get rid of him.
yeah,
And I mean, who knows if he would have wanted to be in a place like Ottawa. I know he
yeah,
didn't want to be in Columbus whatsoever.
yeah.
But hey, he's already had a shutout with Vegas the other night, so he wouldn't have been a bad pickup depending. I mean, our defense isn't exactly doing their job right now, but might have been a guy just to come in and ease some of the pressure. But it is
Yeah.
what it is. You can't change the roster now. I don't think Dorion expected Talbot to be injured basically within a day of the deadline. So
Yeah. I think that Dorion didn't necessarily see the Sens as a big buyer this trade deadline. And the fact that he went out and got Chikrin was because he's a guy who's going to be here next year and the year after, and because he was available and the price was right. I don't think that he, and which is why he didn't go out and get a goaltender to help the Sens patch up this run together, because like this is not the Sens years, and it's like that's the thing at the end of the day, right? It's like you alluded to it before, Matt. It's like what the Sens sneak into the final playoff spot and then get windmill dunked on by a historically good Boston team. Like what's the? I mean, like I know, like we all just want playoffs because it's been a long time, and listen, like we all understand that sentiment, but like this is not the Sens year. Like we're gonna best case scenario, we sneak in, push Boston to 5 or 6 games or something, right? Like that's I know that the Sens have overachieved in the playoffs in previous years and beaten teams that they weren't necessarily expected to beat. But I mean, like taking like a two rookie goaltending tandem into the playoffs right now would just be, a recipe for disaster. I think that the Sens, it's going to be next year or the year after is when they're really going to have to go for it. They're going to have 2 more years of Chikrin and two more years of Claude Giroux, lining up with each other. You're going to have, Timmy's big boy contract kicking in next season, I believe. You're going to have 1 more year of Sanderson on an ELC, and next season might be what Dorion has circled in his calendar, even if he's not going to put voice to that. And I think that he's saving up any additional assets that he might need to spend in order to acquire some pieces to help push the team forward for a year when he knows it'll count.
Yeah.
And I know that we don't really have the whole GM discussion on the docket for today's episode, but I mean, we're on it right now. So I'll just chime in with something else.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people have been advocating, trade DeBrincat. DeBrincat doesn't look the same, this, that, and the other thing. And I think we can put some of the blame on the player 100%. And I think some of the blame can go elsewhere, and we'll get to that. But DeBrincat, even if he just takes the qualifying offer, one thing you should never underestimate is a player in their big money contract season. And I don't know. I feel like if you roll back with DeBrincat on his, I don't want to call it like a prove it deal, but like his qualifier, and he's got that 1 year to show that no, he deserves bigger money, a bigger payday. Yeah, you have Sanderson on the final year of his ELC, and Giroux will, he's not going to stay a point per game defensive stalwart and offensive guru for the next 4 or 5 years. So I really think next year is when you kind of try to throw all your chips on the table, and I don't know, maximize what you have in terms of your margins on salary and all that, and just try and go for it. Like, even if it's a dark horse underdog team, like you never know. LA went in 2012, and I know they had stellar goaltending, but they were an 8th seed, rode a hot streak right to the cup. So you never know. Anybody can get in and do damage. And I think next season, with all how the contracts are lining up, might be a season to just do it, just try it and see what happens.
Yeah.
I've been tired of just like the playoff drought, and like, I don't know, at some point you kind of just have to just do it. Just go for it.
The Stones that Jarmo Kekalainen had a couple of years ago when he traded for Duchesne, they loaded up at the deadline, and because he knew he was losing Bobrovsky, and he knew that Seth Jones wanted out.
And also, I think, didn't Panarin, wasn't that another?
Yeah. Panarin wanted out too.
Yeah. And he
everything,
knew that.
Yeah.
He
everything
knew that
was
Duchesne
against
wouldn't
them.
resign, and
yeah. So the respect I had for that guy for doing that, like, GMs don't do that.
Yeah.
You don't see that. And when he did that, I think I said that a lot there. When you see something like that happen, it really gives respect and credence to the fact that once you get to the playoffs, you can do something there. And sure, I do believe that we would have gotten steamrolled by Boston, especially with Sogard and Mandolisi as the goaltenders. But there's something to be said, Matt, about, a guy in his contract year and all this going forward. And like, sure, maybe DeBrincat does get a $9 million qualifying offer because he wants the money, or he realizes like I could settle on my like career average of what I should be owed and play it out. Like, I don't know. There's a lot to be said about signing with a contender who you see that is going to go the distance. But I think for DeBrincat, for example, what's really frustrating is he got what, like 8 games played with Stutzla, and that was it. Like, the guy is the best goal scorer we have, and that's saying something. And you didn't try him with your best player? Are you nuts?
So I
Yeah.
think this is a good time to move to coaching.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I think that we can definitely talk on that. I think there's a lot of lineup decisions that people have been confused about. And I don't want to necessarily pinpoint like every little coaching decision that DJ Smith has made. But yeah, this is definitely something that we can talk about. Hey, Sens fans, we know you're obviously a big fan of hockey, but are you also a big fan of basketball? Are you ready for the underdogs, the upsets, and the unbelievable action from DraftKings Sportsbook? The biggest tournament in college basketball is here, March Madness. Right now, new customers can just bet $5 on college hoops and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Plus, for a limited time, all customers can score a no sweat bet during round 1 and 2 of the tournament. Go to the app, opt in, and place a no sweat bet this weekend. If it doesn't hit, you'll get a bonus bet back up to $10. And we don't know if you're taking a 16th ranked team or if you're going for number 1, but you can get those bonus bets. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and sign up with code THPN. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Win or lose, only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code THPN. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See our show notes for details. Thank you, Sens Army, and go Sens go. Welcome back, everybody. And as we kind of alluded to before the break, we're going to get into coaching and talk about DJ Smith's deployment of players and all that stuff. So kicking it off, Matt, I know you were passionately about to start something, so I'll let you finish that thought that you were about to share with us.
Yeah, I was talking with Matt at before we got on the podcast, and I said, losing Josh Norris exceptionally detrimental to the season, losing Forsberg with two knee injuries simultaneously, very detrimental to the rest of our season. But there is nothing more detrimental to our season and the outlook for this season than running with a losing coach. A coach that seemingly has other coaches in a quandary of sorts because they don't understand what he does. They don't see his system. They don't see the value in it. And quite frankly, like as hockey fans ourselves, aside from the dump and chase, we don't know what he's doing. You see defensemen taking steps backwards in their play because they are playing in a system that doesn't make sense. You're seeing, and this isn't just on DJ. It has a lot to do with his coaching staff as well. And that's Jack Capuano, who is the defense coach, but he was a forward during his playing career. Kind of wild. DJ loves his rugged defensemen. You've seen Jake Sanderson stapled to Travis Hamonic. And this isn't to say that Travis Hamonic isn't a decent depth defenseman, because I think he is in the right scenario. Jake Sanderson is about to be a breakout star defensively, and you want your best players playing with him. Why it took 5-6 games to get Jacob Chikrin on his right side is beyond me. But you look at players who come into DJ's system initially they're quite successful. You look at Matthew Joseph last year, came in point per game player. You had Jacob Chikrin at the start, who wasn't used to the system, was doing what he does best, and looked great. Now he looks like just one of the other defensemen we have. Um, and then the biggest one is Alex DeBrincat. Uh, he hasn't looked like himself all season. And his deployment as a forward through DJ's system is not beneficial to his style of play. And when you have a player of that caliber, a 40 goal scorer, that's somebody you want to be playing with your best players, like a Tim Stützle, who, as we said, got 6 to 8 games with DeBrincat, and that was it. They had very little time to get chemistry together, and then he went back to the Giroux, Kachuk, Stützle line. Don't get me wrong, that's an unreal line, but at a point you need to get your star sharpshooter going. And I don't feel like there was any opportunity for DeBrincat to actually do that, who's still having a solid season. He's just like he's got 55, 56 points this season, and he's still good. But the fact of the matter is, if he was given the ample opportunity that he, deserves and is afforded, in my opinion, this doesn't happen. But the defensive systems are just, they're non-existent because you're seeing guys getting walked. They're doing dump and chase. They're doing all of this stuff that just is not beneficial to a team that is made by puck possession players. And that's my spiel, because at a point, the biggest boon for this offseason is finding a capable, established NHL head coach.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that I've been a defender of DJ for a long time, but I think that we all see the writing on the wall here. And with I think that you could argue both Dorion and DJ are probably in lame duck positions. I'd say DJ more so than Dorion, because Dorion has had some success with putting together a pretty good roster in the last year, I think we would all say. And I think he's bought himself some time that Sens fans wouldn't have thought he would have had a couple of years ago. But listen, like as soon, and we're going to touch on the ownership future of the Sens in a moment, but just to say, I mean, like, we know that there's basically no way that DJ is still the coach next year, because it's very difficult to take a team that is like a perennial playoff misser and turn them into a playoff team with the same coach that they've had while they've been, like bottom feeders, basically. I think it's a lot to ask a coach to take that next step. I think DJ has been a decent coach for the Sens for where they have been the last few seasons. He's been teaching these young guys to, like, play hard, take responsibility, like the vibes in the room are good. Like the players like him as a guy, but he's not a very sophisticated coach. And I think that is like not an out there take. And I think that, we're seeing players have success in this system. I mean, Timmy's could easily be a 40 goal, like 85 point player this season, which is crazy. Like, he is going to be an absolute monster in this league, and he's doing that, so he's got good players around him now when he didn't before, but he's doing that while arguably being like kind of undercoached. And I think a lot of this team is kind of undercoached. And a lot of that goes back to, you mentioned that it's not just DJ, it's the team. And I mean, this is like the lack of ambition that the Sens have had under previous ownership, which is still because we're still kind of in that no man's land between owners now. This is like the legacy of the Melnick era, right? Is like having bad people in your hockey ops, from the top all the way down to coaching. And this is a continuation of that. You have a lot of guys who are not sought after by other teams in the league. And I think that I think that it will be a big win for the team if they go into next season with Chikrin on the roster, with Norris hopefully healthy, with Forsberg and maybe hopefully another NHL quality goalie, in the fold and a new coach. And then I think we're saying, okay, if next year's the year and if we have all those things in place, we're cooking.
And a few comments I wanted to make. First off, going back to other Matt's point about Capuano, yes, defensive coach. Actually, when I was writing for the Hockey Writers, I did a lot of looking into the different defenses that he coached during his time with the Islanders and then with the Panthers. His defense actually got more points when he was the defense coach than they did with his predecessors. However, I feel like in Ottawa, the results haven't translated, which is interesting because over the course of his tenure, he did get results out of the rosters that he did coach. So I don't know why the difference with Ottawa. It could be personnel. I know Hamonic, Holden, Goodbranson, Coburn, Josh Brown. Like they've had a turnstile of replacement level defensemen, and that could definitely be a part of it. Yeah. So there's I not saying that I would keep Capuano on a future staff under a new head coach, but I do think that it's interesting that what used to be something that he was very good at has not translated to the Sens in the same way, especially when they now have a defensive core that looks much better on paper. Aside from that, I think what the other interesting thing is like you said, players seem to come into Ottawa. They have their kind of, I don't know, bursts of the player that they are and their games. And then they kind of, I don't know, get watered down and everybody kind of blends together and seems very similar, except for one. And I find that that's Tim Stützle. And people can say Claude Giroux has really stood out and been excellent this year. He has. But aside from Tim Stützle, I can't say that any one player stands out to me during a game more than him. Yeah. He consistently brings his little, like, whatever you want to call it, his dipsy doodles, his little dangling and some people harp on him for having too much flair sometimes. And hey, I myself have criticized some of his dumping of the puck out of the zone on the penalty kill or whatever, which one time led to a goal against. And
yeah,
it happens, but he has that flair, and I'm glad that it hasn't left his game. And I think we could talk again about coaching in the off season or something, but I do want to get to our final topic before we're done here for the evening. And that is that Ottawa has about 9 bids right now for the Ottawa Senators, the organization, which is crazy, potentially exceeding $900 million. And it just so happens that Ryan Reynolds, part owner of Mint Mobile. Mint Mobile was recently acquired by T-Mobile, and Reynolds has a 25% stake in Mint Mobile. And taking a quarter of the sale price of Mint Mobile would equate to about $337.5 million. So interesting that Ryan Reynolds and Mint Mobile get sold when, Bettman comes out and says that they're hoping for the Sens to be sold in the upcoming weeks, however many weeks that is.
Yeah. I think it's and obviously, it's been doom and gloom on the Senators, but this is the most exciting news that we've had in a long time. We've been hoping for new ownership and we're finally getting it. And I think the addition of Ryan Reynolds would be a huge boon to the franchise. I think there's a lot of really, really great potential owners, but it just looks like it's got to be them. And I think, if he's involved, you're probably accruing a lot of promotional stuff. And if the talk is true about having him followed by cameras already, there's interest in some sort of television deal and show like the Wrexham thing.
Yeah, I'll say one. I don't have too much to add about the ownership sitch right now. The bids just came in this past week. NHL is assessing them right now, and they're gonna separate the most serious offers from the ones which are less desirable. One thing that Bettman said though that I thought was interesting was that the new owners will not be tied to the LeBreton, deal downtown, that, it'll be up to them how they want to proceed. Personally, I think that's Bettman, just like being I don't know, equivocating. I think that he's just, I think he's just saying that because I think anyone would tell you that the future of this team is downtown. And I think that for how hard the Bettman pushed to try and get that, to try and help the city and the team put that deal together, I think that the team will ultimately end up there. And I think he doesn't want to tie the hands of a prospective new owner, which is why he's saying that. But I mean, like, come on, like if you're a new owner, like, and you have a potential avenue to bring this team downtown, like you're gonna take that 10 times out of 10.
And let's remember, it's not just the team that's going to be downtown. All the concert revenue from having a centralized location. I've noticed some of the concerts I've attended over the past year or two at the CTC, they've actually had sections closed off, which normally they'll have a few for, like said, people can't see behind stage. But I've noticed that some of the ones in the 300s get cut off. And I feel like if you have an arena like that downtown and you bring in a band, like I think Journey was there the other night, I don't know how packed it was there, but I'm sure that you sell even more tickets if that arena is a more centralized location.
Yeah. And to your point, Bennett, I don't necessarily think it's not getting them downtown. It's just there are other possible locations that Ottawa has seemingly popped up recently. One of them being the RCMP headquarters off of the highway, and the also the baseball stadium, like areas like that. But I think Bettman was more saying it doesn't need to be LeBreton, but it has to be downtown. So
yeah,
just adding that fuel to the fire there.
We could be the first city that has an NHL arena built on a river. Imagine that.
Yeah.
There we go. That's a concept. Anyway, unless you guys have anything else to add, I think we'll wrap it up.
No, I'm just thinking about where other NHL arenas are and if they're on a river or not.
It would give a whole new meaning to the words floodgates opened.
Oh, boo. I gotta kick him off for that.
I'm out of here.
For everyone watching, thank you so much. We just recently hit 300 subscribers on YouTube. So because of that, we're going to be doing a giveaway on our Twitter account. So you can follow us there at Senstennial. And hopefully we'll get that up in the next couple of days here. We've all had busy weeks, so just trying to find time to get that set up. But giveaway coming soon, so look out for that on Twitter. Aside from that, you can follow us where you normally do, Twitter and Instagram and Reddit at the Senstennial. And also our personal Twitter accounts will be in the description on either the audio version of the podcast or in the YouTube description. So you can find those there as well. Thank you so much for watching or listening. We really appreciate it. Hopefully the Sens can turn the luck around and make it a I don't know, closer little trip to the finish line here and maybe make it a little bit more exciting for fans. They run the gauntlet in the upcoming couple of weeks, so we'll see what happens. Go Sens go, and we'll catch you next episode.
See ya.
Cheers.